Hello, today I'm going to be taking apart this McCulloch 1-72 chainsaw. It's from the late 60s. It's really a relic. Manual oiler, it's not automatic. I can't find any manuals for this chainsaw, so I'm posting this so that if there's anyone like me trying to figure out how to take it apart, this might help. And it was a struggle to figure out without any kind of guidance. First thing I did is I cleaned it off. This chainsaw was badly greased up, so I'm spraying it with the pressure washer, trying to get rid of those big clumps. That done, I'm going to start taking apart whatever I can, because I don't have the procedure in a manual. First thing I do is take off that air filter cover. There's the air filter element. Here's the gas cap. Solid little guy. I think it's solid metal. Now I come to this shroud. This protects the flywheel and the magneto. It's pretty badly greasy, just like everything else on this old chainsaw. There's the bolt that held that shroud in place. Now I'm going to take apart the magneto. This begins my magneto troubles, because although I'm able to take out these two mounting bolts, that only frees the magneto to jiggle around. I'm not actually able to take the leads out and get the thing out of the way. Very frustrating stuff. So there you see me. I'm pulling out a pin. This is holding yet another type of shroud. So I removed that. Now I'm back at the magneto, and you see it's not going anywhere. The leads are still attached. They're routed through this chainsaw like thread in clothing, so it's not easy to remove. Having given up on that then, now I start taking out the rest of these screws, just various screws and bolts that are holding shrouds. And then I begin to attack it a little more systematically. So now I want to remove this handle. To start doing that though, I'm going to remove this spiked portion here that just holds the chainsaw against a log when you're cutting it. So there it comes off, looks rather aggressive. Lets me get at these bolts, holding the handle on a little bit better. There you see the bolt and its accompanying nuts. So that lets me start to loosen the handle, and you see it fatigued and it broke. So that's devastating. I'm gonna have to fix that. Before I fix it though, I've got to finish taking off this handle here. So it's held on the sides by these two brackets. I just have to take out the little bolt and the nut, and then those brackets let the handle move freely. The brackets connect to that top portion there. So one side is out. Now I'm just going to take off this other side. There's the bolt and the nut once again. Now this little bracket, this little clamp thing comes off, and I'm able to free the handle. That takes off quite a lot of the bulk of the chainsaw. I want to remove this top attachment point to the handle though, so now I'm unscrewing it. I had to blow out. The nut got stuck in the socket there. But you can see there's little rubber pads on this thing. It's going to make it so that it kind of cushions the vibration from the chainsaw to the handle. A nice feature to have on something as jiggly as this unit. And there goes that top attachment point that's rubber pads. Okay, now I'm going to be dealing with, this is basically a fuel tank. It's cast in two portions, a bottom portion and a top portion, and it's held in place by just a dizzying amount of screws. So I take all these screws out, but you'll see later in the video I have a lot of trouble with this because the seal is so tight, and I didn't want to break any of these cast alloy parts. So I would just WD-40 the seal all around this gas tank and then try and pry it open, and it wouldn't come. I do this over and over. I end up taking apart everything except the gas tank, and it's only at the end of the video you'll see me actually be able to remove the top part of this gas tank. While I've been speaking, I'm still unscrewing all of these screws. There's so many of them. They really don't want this to go anywhere. So there's screws on the outside, there's screws on the inside, and you just have to remove them all, or else you won't be able to separate the parts. So I've methodically taken them out. You can see how the throttle is going to move the linkage, how it's connected to the carburetor. I want to start taking this handle and everything else, these levers, I want it all out. So I knock the pins out so that I can take it all free. I'm going to start loosening the attachment point of the handle to the chainsaw body on the top end of the handle. It's just held in place there by these two screws. Then I'm going to take this screw out here, big long one in the back of the handle. Then I'm taking these screws out. This is just so that I can wash this rubber grip thing. It's pretty filthy. So I come back for a moment. I want to get all my rubber parts together, so I just remove that little hose. I also found a nut that had dropped in there, so I take that out too. I come back, I want to remove this shroud. There are a lot of shroud pieces. Rather than being formed in one complete unit, they're built up. So there's like 4 or 5 shroud pieces on this chainsaw. And in any case, with that shroud piece gone, I can now get at some of the bolts holding the bottom of the handle to the chainsaw. You see that the steps they're all broken up in this. It was kind of frustrating, especially to edit this video and try and make them make sense. But here I am taking apart the bottom of the handle. That's going to let me then access the grip. So I'm taking off the rubber grip from the top of the handle. Again, it's just greased. Oh, it's going to need some cleaning. We'll say that. I'm able to remove these levers. One of these little push button levers is for the oiler. There's no automatic oiling, it's all manual. And then the other one is for the choke, I believe. So they're held in place by these pins. I'm taking these pins out. I'm taking these levers out where I can. You won't be able to get the handle off completely because there's the kill switch on it, which will come later. And also these little levers, these little push buttons, they have linkages, little metal linkages, so you have to free those before you can free the push button. Now I'm trying to take off the kill switch. There's a little screw on the bottom that connects a lead. And there's a little bit of an assembly to it. That shows how it works. Coming back here, I'm just showing you some little pieces of things that I'm taking out. I'm sick now of dealing with the magneto, so I just cut one of the leads. I can solder that back together. But for now, I just want the magneto off. So I've done all I can there. Now I'm going to go to the muffler. The muffler originally was loose. This is a bad thing to have occur because this chainsaw is vibrating quite a lot. So as it's vibrating, it's like grinding your teeth when you sleep, except it's what these components are doing while the saw is running. So the screws are already loose. I'm going to loosen them out all the way. I don't notice too much damage though, which I'm grateful for. It didn't look like it completely destroyed the chainsaw or anything. Now I'm going to go to the recoil starter. I've got my safety glasses on. Pop those on whenever you're dealing with springs. It's held in place by a couple screws. That's kind of what they look like. Now, you see the cover's kind of coming loose. I was really afraid that it would just explode open. The spring really isn't that powerful when the coil is withdrawn. So here you see me uncoiling it. There's the cover. Beautiful, just gorgeous parts on this. I love it. Now I smash out, there was like a little pin holding the sheave that the rewind starter winds around. So I can take that sheave off and you'll be able to see the cord with a little handle. The cord is again entirely coated in oil. It is gross to touch. So I'm gonna have to clean that up. Yeah, oh, Just remembering how that felt makes me shudder. Now I'm going to the spring. This is the spring that helps the recoiler rewind. Before I take it out though, I'm loosening these screws that hold this housing type thing in place. The clutch is underneath it. That's what I want to get to next. But before I can do that, I'm going to take all these springs out. And then I decide that I'm going to remove the coil spring. There I am unwinding it. You see it growing bigger. That's what it looks like. And to remove this housing, I've got to remove this part of the tension mechanism and the part that holds the bar in place, the chainsaw bar. So I'm taking off these nuts, these bolts. They're coming right out of there. Here you see the assembly is beginning to come loose. So I'm able to take it out. One of the dogs that engages the chainsaw when you pull the starter, you saw it fall on the bench. Here's what the housing looks like though, all greasy and gross. There's the dog or the paw, whichever you want to call it. Here's me taking out the chain tensioning mechanism. It's kind of intuitive if you look at it for a while, but it's still really a pain to do because this is a really long threaded screw, so you're going to be turning it quite a bit. But you get it out. You see this little piece that travels along it, and that's how that works. Here's the housing in detail some more. Turns out this housing is actually two pieces, so I want to take these pieces apart so that I can clean them separately. So I'm going to unscrew those screws. Coming back to the chainsaw now, I'm going to loosen off the chain and the bar, for that matter. So now you can see the bar come free. There it is. Now I'm going to... There's still all these shrouds in the way. It was really not a straightforward assembly, especially because I couldn't get that fuel tank open. So I kept on trying to open it and then going back and doing anything else I could besides the fuel tank. So in this case, I'm trying to take apart these shrouds and as well the little rubber dampers between them. There I take off the chain. Now I'm coming to the flywheel again because I can't take that fuel tank apart. So frustrating. But there I take the nut off the flywheel. There's a little washer beneath it. And then the flywheel, I actually just tap the crankshaft and take it off. I didn't capture that on film, unfortunately, but there you see it free. Now I begin a task that ended up being more difficult than I anticipated, which was taking apart the condenser and some of the leads to it. Some of these wires were just... they were in there really good. And then we also had... there's these screws, and they've got these little plates that have an end that's turned up over them so they can't loosen. So you have to pound that plate down first, and then you can take the screw out. It's a whole process, which I've mostly edited out, but you can kind of get the gist of it. And then underneath all that mess is the breaker points. So there's the breaker point cover with its little gasket. Here we get a great view of the breaker points. Now I'm taking apart the breaker points. Taking out these little tiny screws and their little... they've all got these special geometric washers. I'm very glad I took a video of it. I don't know if I would be able to put it back together if I didn't have a record of what these pieces actually look like and what shape they are and what orientation they are. Very happy to take video of all of this. Here you see some of the little pieces. There's the breaker point assembly. It's like Bakelite or plastic or something like that. Here you have a little oil drip, so the oil in the crankcase would go into that piece of felt and then lubricate the breaker points ever so slightly. You can see the whole crankshaft side without the breaker points, and now I'm dealing with another part of the ignition, the spark plug. I got tired of being overly careful when turning this engine around, so I decided to just go ahead and take it out. I figured I had done about as much as I could with the breaker points in that part of the engine, so now I'm trying to push out these little rubber boots that these levers go through. That one lever is for the choke, one lever is for the throttle, and they have these little rubber boots. Obviously you want this because otherwise you would get foreign particles, contaminants getting into your fuel, into your carburetor chamber, so the boots prevent that. And they're still actually supple. They're not brittle or anything. It's really amazing considering the age of the engine. But having done that, I still can't get the fuel tank apart, of course, so I'm going to take off the clutch, because may as well. So I've got this 2x4, this block of wood, that's keeping the clutch from turning. I loosen it off. I don't get that moment on camera, though. I just showed you the bolt there. Clutch comes out of its housing. It's a centrifugal type clutch. As it spins, it throws its weight out and it engages. So if you rev the engine, it engages. If the engine's idling, it won't engage. It's that kind of a system. There's this special washer. Every part on this thing is somehow special and has an orientation. It's really something else. Here's the key though. This shaft has a key. It's a little half moon key, so I knocked it out there. That's going to let me take out this housing. There you see it. Then there's this circular, I want to call it a washer, but it's a little more complex. I'm not sure what to call it exactly. Coming over to the other side, you've got more shrouds just to remove. Like I said, shrouds everywhere on this chainsaw. So I'm taking out as many screws and as many bolts as I can. There, I'm spinning them out, and the shroud comes free. And there's another piece of the shroud. See how these two... See how they're built up? That's what I meant by... It's not one complete unit of a shroud, it's several pieces. Now I'm back to the fuel compartment, because I still can't split the two halves. And I want to remove the carburetor. I want to get the carburetor out of there, and then I'm going to take it apart later as a unit. So I'm going to undo these nuts, these bolts, remove the carburetor. That's what it looks like. Special little unit. It can operate in any orientation. And that's what the nut and the bolt looks like that held the carburetor to the flange. So here is my source of misery. I'm really frustrated. I couldn't take these two halves apart. I kept doing this. I kept using penetrating oil, WD-40 in this case. I'm trying to moisten it. I'm trying to make it so that those two parts will split apart, because it's scary, because this is all cast alloy, and I know that if I do it wrong, I'm going to break it, and I'm not going to find a replacement part. So I sprayed it, I tried to take it apart. It didn't work, and then once again, I went on to something else. Now I'm dealing with what I believe is a governor. Not entirely sure what that does. It's, in any case, some kind of linkage that goes from the outside to the inside of the engine and has a little tiny set screw with a hex head, so you have to undo that, and then you can take it out. Here you're going to get a really good view of it. Just a little pin with a spring on it and a little lever. Okay, now I'm dealing with the... This is where the oiler goes, so I'm trying to now get at the engine. So where you see that little cap at the top of the screen, you would fill that with oil. I end up using an impact wrench because these bolts are really stubborn. So I'm going to loosen them with the impact. There, you hear it go. So now I can take that bolt out. That's what it looks like. Pretty long bolts. Just gonna loosen them all up. I've got them all loose now. That's the way I like it. Perfect. That's what it looks like. And now I can just gently, carefully ease this off. Really carefully. Don't want to break anything. And the two parts are separated. And that's all the oil. You can see the oil filter in the bottom. Here's like a gasket type thing. Well, it's the bottom cover. And then you can see the crankcase within. So now I'm coming to take apart this section here and throw my screwdriver at the camera. So this is now where the bar would ride. And I'm just taking out these little tiny fittings, these little tiny parts that I wasn't able to access previously. There's the oil. It's like a little oil valve. This is where the oil would come for the bar. There's the little oil filter inside. You can just wiggle that pipe off and then clean the filter. Now I'm back at the engine as a whole. I'm taking this shroud out. I love taking off shrouds. There's so many on this engine. I hope you also love taking off shrouds because there's a lot on this engine. So you have lots of that to look forward to. Take that shroud off. Now I'm back at the gas tank. Taking out whatever screws that I can. And I'm really exhausting my options here. I'm going to have to come to splitting that tank eventually. It just keeps not working and I keep being afraid of it. I really should have done it sooner. But I'm going for a complete disassembly and cleaning, so I guess it doesn't matter what order I do things in. It just bothers me to be defeated. But anyways, there's some bolts that hold that housing in place. Here you see the big end of the crankshaft. You see some alignment marks on one side but not the other. Here I am loosening those big end bolts. They have a hex head, so that's why you see me using my hex screw there. Now I'm at the big end, I'm taking it out. So I've lifted it out there, and you'll remember the alignment marks. Those will be important for when you're putting it back. There, I'm just pointing to it. And as well, there's all these needle bearings that need to come out too. So there they are. There. Now I'm coming to the cylinder head. Again, hex screws. So I'm going to use my Allen wrench to loosen them. I think there's 6. Nothing really out of the ordinary. It's a pretty typical cylinder head with a hemispherical combustion chamber at the top. So there, the head is loose. So now I can kind of shimmy and jiggle it off. Being careful not to be too forceful and break any cooling fins. There it comes off. That's the cylinder head. That's the orientation it was in. There's the combustion chamber with the spark plug hole. Here you see there's a gasket. At first I thought it might be copper, but it seems to be aluminum or some other light metal. I didn't think you could use this as a gasket, but they do. And then the piston can come out. Comes out the top end cleanly and nicely. There's the alignment mark again that I'm pointing to. Badly scuffed, badly burnt piston. I'll have to do something about that. And the top end also rides on a needle bearing. 2 needle bearings, in fact, in the piston itself. So here's a shroud. I took out the screws earlier, but then I removed it and the little rubber pieces that dampen it. I'm taking off, that's where the breaker points was housed. This is where the bearing rides for the crankshaft. There's a little rubber seal in there so that it doesn't leak out. So I take that out. There's my crankshaft. It's supported on only one side, so now I can tap out the crankshaft. And this is not sped up or anything. I'm just very, very lightly tapping it with a hammer. And it comes out bit by bit. And then it comes out entirely, and you can see there's an O-ring that goes in the one side. There's the roller bearings. It's a sturdy little unit, I'll have to say that. There's the piston. Here you get to see the damage. I'm examining how beat up it is. It's got lots of blow-by and some pretty nasty scuffing on the skirts. Like, look at that. I don't think it should look like that. Okay, I'm taking the rings out. This is scary. 2,000 beats per minute. That's my heart rate. This is very frightening. These rings are brittle. They're made of cast iron. And in my experience, taking them out by hand leads them to break, but I didn't have a ring spreader small enough for these rings, so I'm just taking them out by hand, very carefully, checking it bit by bit, going really slow, making sure that the ring isn't binding or twisting. It might be best just to consider these rings as made out of glass. They are very fragile, very brittle. This is a scary process. I know it doesn't come through as scary, but for me it was terrifying. So there's the top ring. The top and the bottom ring are actually pretty well indistinguishable to my eye. So it's a ring, but it's a very thin ring. So now that bottom ring is out, and here's what they look like. So I'm going to split the fuel tank. It's finally going to happen. So I've just been going around with the screwdriver over the course of like 10 minutes and gently tapping and gently trying to pry it apart. And there you hear it. You hear the seal break. I thought maybe the alloy had broken, but no, it was just the seal. It's finally over. I can finally get this fuel tank apart. I'm going to be still pretty careful, like I don't want to ruin anything. And I'm actually a bit too cautious. I was trying to preserve the gasket, but the gasket was adhered on one side and then on the other side, so there was kind of no way to get it out but to sacrifice it. And there you can finally see the fuel. It's the side with that felt sponge. There's a little spring that presses the sponge against the fuel inlet so that you're not just having a bunch of fuel come in. It's a very sensible system to have a sponge like that, because if you've turned the saw upside down, you'll still get fuel. It'll still draw in fuel from that sponge. So now I'm taking out a bunch of the parts that are part of the fuel system. Here you see the actual, I've been calling it a sponge, it's actually just a piece of felt. That's the little cap that presses down on it with the spring and closes off the fuel inlet, or rather just restricts how much fuel can go through it. Holds the sponge tight against it too. There you see the fuel inlet there. Some sedimentation going on, don't like that. We'll have to clean that out. Now on the other side, you see the reed. That's where fuel is going to be entering into the crankcase. There you see the matching face on the other side. Now, I'm just taking out this linkage. I think that's for the manual oiler. Coming back to the reed though, I'm just going to try and pop it out, pry it out. Take the screws out is actually the proper way to do it. So there's the little reed, the housing for it, and here's the reed itself. Very thin little piece of spring metal. Now I can take this block off. I think part of its function is just to thermally isolate the carburetor so that the heat of the engine doesn't just boil it and break it. So there's that. There's that little thermal spacer, and then there's these very, very thin gaskets on either side. So I'm going to give it the WD-40 treatment because I want to take it off as one piece. Now I'm dealing with the carburetor. Carburetor, same as a lot of other parts, has seals and gaskets that have really dried out and they've become like glue. So spray those with WD-40, then I go and I loosen the screws. Sorry to startle you there. I'm having to put quite a lot of pressure with my shoulder so that this doesn't cam out when I turn it. So I'm just taking apart the carburetor. The engine is all apart, and this is the last thing that I need to disassemble before I go and clean it in my sonic cleaner, and then paint the parts later. So I'm taking apart this carburetor. All those screws come out. It's actually a very simple carburetor. It's a diaphragm type, so there's not really a float as you would be used to. Instead, there's these special gaskets that you should be careful not to ruin that act as the diaphragm apparatus for the carburetor. There it is apart. Here's a little like sintered bronze filter type thing at the fuel inlet. And here I am. All the parts have been cleaned in my sonic cleaner, and I'm just giving them a clear coat. So hope this video was helpful. If you've got your own McCulloch 1-72, it's a bit of a slog to get through it, but I know you can do it, and I wish you well. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.